Hello and welcome to the Christian Reeve podcast, another episode and another interview. Today, I have the great honor of interviewing an actual professional wrestler. So for those who aren't aware, I think most of you are aware at this point, I'm a massive wrestling fan, have been for many, many years since I was very young. And yeah, to be able to interview an actual wrestler is something special for me. So yeah, our current guest today goes by the name Matt Rivera or Matt Saxon, and he is a professional wrestler, a rapper, an actor, and more recently a YouTuber as well. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
You have done your research.
Oh yeah, I don't cut corners, my friend.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful intro. That was nice.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Now, I'm going to jump right into this because, like I said to you just before, we don't have you for long. So I'm going to do my very best to really just kind of put you over and kind of get everyone up to speed with you. Now, we'll start with I don't know if what you want to call it, elephant in the room. Basically, Matt Rivera kind of came to fame sort of around sort of 2013 when you appeared on TLC's Extreme Cheapskates.
Right.
And for anyone who doesn't know, this is one of those reality TV shows where they basically just kind of film a bunch of stuff, making you look bad and then kind of laughing at you and stuff. And normally, I kind of watch these programs and I think like, it is what it is if you like this sort of thing.
Right.
But I obviously came across this clip. And then I came across Cody Ko and Noel Miller reacting to it as part of their series, That's Cringe.
Right.
And I kind of felt differently about this because on one hand, I was like, okay, I can see the funny side of it. It is funny. If you watch it, it's like, if you know anything about professional wrestlers, like, people like Mick Foley and stuff, that, trying to save money on the road is a regular thing, but you kind of take it to like the nth degree.
Right.
Yeah, I've asked you questions about this in live streams and stuff. But for those who don't know, obviously you did this, you agreed to do this. Now, obviously it was a case of, here's another way to maybe get myself known, get myself out there. You're trying to get signed.
Right.
I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you right off the bat is, did you get the TNA audition like through that TV show, or was it kind of a sort of thing where like you already were going and they factored that in? Tell us a little bit about that real quick.
Oh, that's hard-hitting questions right off the bat. I like it. So it was kind of a weird situation. I was training at a few different places at the time. Like, it's weird because I always have to break down the show a little bit. So in the episode, you see me training with Joel Maximo over in Brooklyn, New York. Now, I've been there a couple of times, but I've trained at a lot of different places. So, a lot of people ask me, oh, that's your trainer. I'm like, well, I have like 4 different trainers, and I go to all these different places, but obviously the show makes it look like, okay, it's just this, or it's only this way. It's just set up in a certain way. But I was very fortunate that I did have an opportunity in the works. However, I feel like the show maybe sped up that opportunity, if that makes sense. So I had something in the works, but once they got on board, it was like, all right, it's definite, and it kind of changed the way it looked. I had a singles tryout as opposed to, them inviting 20 wrestlers to come over and do a tryout.
I was going to say, I was very surprised by that because I've heard about tryouts for major companies and stuff, and typically, it will be behind the scenes thing, or maybe they might even try you out as a dark match on a show or something like that. But like this was actually, as you say, like a proper match and stuff.
Right.
And you got like Kurt Angle right there watching you the whole time. I mean, plus the cameras. I mean, it must be really, really nerve-wracking and everything.
Extremely. No pun intended with the, Extreme Cheapskates, but yeah, it was extremely stressful because you kind of picture what a typical tryout should look like. And I knew this wasn't going to be typical because of the cameras. They want to capture certain elements of what that would look like. So in my head, I'm like, all right, this isn't going to be, take 10 bumps, run the ropes. It's not going to be like drills or anything like that. So I didn't really know what it was going to look like. And I would say That's the only thing that I wish was a little bit different with the outcome. I don't mind that it didn't turn out the way I had hoped, but I kind of wish they didn't really break down how the filming was going to be of the tryout. So I didn't know what to expect at all. You know, like Chris Saban's just like, all right, we're getting in the ring and we're going to do a couple things. All right, you know, like that's it. And when it was over, it seemed like it was over so fast. And I'm just sitting there like, damn, that's it. That was my opportunity and it's done, you know?
See, and this is one of the things as well, watching back that clip, because, you know, as I told you before, I'm a massive wrestling fan, and I looked at it a bit differently. Like, I saw the fun side of it, and then I just see the look in your face and like the way that, and I'm like, shit, man. Like, I just really felt for you because I could tell how much it meant for you. You know, there's so many wrestlers out there that are trying to, you know, get to it's, I mean, it's a very oversaturated market. It's very hard to like make yourself different in some shape or form. And like, as harsh as it is to say, just being a good wrestler isn't really enough. It's like you have to have the charisma, and you've got to be, you know, be a marketeer. I mean, especially in 2020, you know, you got to be great on the social media. You've got to be almost like selling your gimmick kind of 24/7.
Right.
So the game has changed, the rules have changed, and that's not to say that, you know, you haven't got those things, because I firmly believe that. That's why I'm always supporting you. Like, I genuinely believe that AEW or something like that is in the cards for you in the very near future. I really just think it's a case of when rather than if.
Right.
And this is kind of why I wanted to start with this and move more towards that, because as far as I'm concerned, like, yeah, this was a funny thing. I mean, this was 7 years ago. Don't forget, this is a long time ago. Things change, people change. And, you know, I kind of feel like the joke is now over kind of thing. It's like, okay, haha. But like, if we just take it back to the Cody Ko thing, like, normally in that series, it's people just being ridiculous and, you know, like, why wouldn't you laugh at them kind of thing, you know? But I think a lot of the time when you're laughing at people on the internet, no thought kind of goes into like the actual person or like how they feel or whatever, right? And as I've gotten older, I've kind of, you know, I don't really laugh at people anymore. I'm just like, I just think about that. I'm like, well, in my hardest times, I wouldn't have wanted that, right?
Right. It takes a different level of empathy. And I think, like you said, when you get older, it kind of clicks a little more. You become a little more sensitive to those things. You're like, oh, well, that kind of stuff for them, you know? Yeah. I hear you.
I think what's different in this situation as well is like, that was actually you. Like, I've asked you, obviously, as I said in live streams and stuff before, and you've said, yeah, that's me. I wasn't putting it on. That's how I thought. And a lot of the time when you get asked these questions to this day, you sort of say that you've kind of toned it down somewhat. Maybe you're not as cheap as you were.
Right.
Real quick, where did you get that kind of mentality? Like, is that something you gained from like a relative, or is that just something that kind of just happened over time? And
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. And this is, I hope my family isn't offended if I say this, but we grew up very poor.
Right.
We lived in the inner city of Manhattan for maybe 15 years or so, bounced around. So we didn't grow up with much. And I've always was someone who appreciated what I had. I'm not a materialistic person. Like, a lot of people look in the studio and they're like, oh, you know, he's spending money left. And I'm like, no. A lot of these are gifts. And this is kind of what has become my work at this point. So I do have to invest in it a little bit. But I'm not a very materialistic person. Like, even my sugar mama will tell me, oh, I wish you dressed a little bit better. Why don't you? We were in the store the other day. I was telling the story about the pops, and she was just like, just get yourself some pops. And there's something about just buying something materialistic for myself that just seems like a waste. Like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. And there's things that I was doing that it wasn't until someone else brought up to me, like, man, what are you doing, bro? Like, that's kind of gross, or that's kind of weird, you know? And I'm like, all right, yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it. Like, I had a roommate, and I used to store a whole bunch of empty water bottles, like ridiculous, 2 drawers of empty water bottles, so I could just fill it up in the sink and keep it going. So if one got like too messed up or destroyed, then I had a backup. But it was like 20 water bottles just empty in the fridge. And he's just like, bro, this is weird. Like, First of all, it's not healthy. And I'm like, oh, why isn't it healthy? And then he told me, he's like, listen, after a while, plastic breaks down. And I'm like, it's fine. You know, and like, but thinking about it, I'm like, all right, if TLC captured me opening up the fridge and there was 20 empty water bottles, they'd be like, oh, this guy's a freak. You know, he's weird. But that's just the way I've always been. I've always been very conscious of money and spending it and not wasting. One of my biggest pet peeves in the world, which was not mentioned on the TLC show, is throwing out food. Well, kind of.
That's fair, though.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And you know what though? But there's some people that are just like, if you don't like it, throw it out. I'm like, it doesn't matter how much I don't like it. If it provides sustenance to me, if it's just extra nutrients, then I'm gonna have it. You know.
I grew up with the same thing. If my grandmother would have seen me do that, that's the end of me.
Yeah. And it's built in. It's like ingrained in my head. Like some of the other stuff, I get it. It's gonna sound funny, but I grew up with really, really bad allergies, and when I was a kid, I would just have a pile of tissues just like right next to my pillow. And like I think about it now, I'm like, that's kind of disgusting. But again, it's what I did growing up. So looking at it, I'm like, oh, I didn't really see the problem of having a pile of dirty tissues and just reusing them over and over again. And I know it sounds disgusting, but especially when I was a kid, like I would wake up in the middle of the night, my nose would bleed. That's how bad. Like,
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I would always just be like boxes of tissues I would go through all the time. But another thing, people are like, oh, you know, how much tissues does one man have to go through? My allergies were that bad that it was just like constant. I would have.
Why didn't you get like handkerchiefs or something?
You know what? And again, it's gonna sound funny. I just never thought of it until someone was like, you should get a handkerchief.
Yeah, okay, fair play.
And also, and this is going to sound really ridiculous, and I don't mind saying it and looking a little foolish, but I almost was like, handkerchiefs, that's kind of gross. And I think about it now, I'm like, all right, Matt, but you can use the same tissues over and over again. Pretty sure that's the same thing or even more gross, right?
Okay, moving it forward, like just kind of one final question on this to tie this part of it up.
Sure.
You got a lot of pushback, you know, you got these two guys on the internet taking the mick out of you. Now you turn that into something, like you smart business-minded person, you go, okay, I'm going to embrace that. You made a YouTube channel, which you had before that. You were doing content before that, but you really kind of gave it a push when these clips started to be released back in 2019 on TLC's website. And then obviously the reaction happened. So you embraced it. You did reactions to their reactions and so on and so forth, right? Now, presumably you got a lot of pushback. Maybe you like often is the case when people like Cody Ko or someone else on the internet makes a reaction video at someone, that person typically gets a lot of hate. Right. Did you get like a lot of pushback? Just out of like what was the general kind of consensus of stuff that you were getting that was on the more negative side and the positive side as well?
Sure.
What was the deal?
I'll give you the whole scoop. You actually mentioned some really interesting stuff that I haven't really publicly said, so I want to touch on that a little bit. So when Extreme Cheapskates first came out, I don't know, the episode itself may have came out in like 2014 or maybe 2013. I don't know. I think I might have filmed it in 2013, something like that. But anyway, when it first happened, I didn't really embrace it at all. Like at all. It wasn't something that I thought to myself, this is going to be my claim to fame. This is going to be, you know, I'm the cheap wrestler now. I was like, no, I'm a wrestler who's cheap, but I'm not the cheap wrestler. I was the #1 attraction, and no one was going to tell me otherwise.
But
so I was very.
Can I just cut you there? Like, surely, as a wrestler, you must have thought at some point, even then, like, surely I can use this. You know, I've just been on television. I can use this to maybe leverage it, and maybe I could even go to a company and be like, "Hey, I was on TV. Give me some more TV time. We'll I don't know. We'll turn it into an angle or something."
So that is what I thought. I just thought I can still do it as the #1 attraction, Matt Saxon. That was kind of my struggle there, where I was like, no, this is my gimmick. I'm the #1 attraction, Matt Saxon, and then this is money. And the funny thing is, that gimmick works. People love the #1 attraction gimmick. It just doesn't have worldwide fame. You know, it doesn't. You know, #1 attraction. That's great. You know, did great on the independent scene. It was fantastic. But I should have smartened up back then and been like, hey, Matt, no more #1 attraction. You're not the #1 attraction anymore. Just embrace the cheap wrestler. And I didn't do that. And I think that's where I dropped the ball for several reasons. Because I'm Matt Saxon, people couldn't find me on the internet. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like people who were like, oh, let me search this guy. This video's funny. No one was finding me. I didn't blow up. People would recognize me at the, on the street or at the grocery store. People would say, oh, you were on that show, right?
Right.
But I feel like I never properly handled it back then. So what happened was TLC decided to, maybe back in 2019, like you had mentioned, they decided to repost it on YouTube. And that's where things got crazy. I noticed right away, people contacting me on YouTube like, hey, aren't you the guy? Hey. And you know what? I looked at my sugar mama and I said, not again. I messed up years ago. Not again. So here we go. I am the cheap wrestler now. I am embracing this. I will say hi to the people. If they want to talk about the TLC episode, we'll talk, like whatever. I am embracing this fully because another thing that I haven't mentioned much on YouTube. So this is pretty cool. This is one of the first podcasts I've done, since everything's blown up. Something that I found very interesting. I've kind of lost my train of thought a little bit there. Oh, what was I saying? I was just kind of rambling a little bit. I lost myself.
I mean, you're on the theme of this Extreme Cheapskates thing, and like kind of like the pushback afterwards, and then it's sort of embracing it, and like now as opposed to back when it happened.
Yeah, I was up so late last night just editing and whatnot, and I'll get to that later. But so my mind's a little. But anyway, So when it came out, I was like, no, I'm embracing it. I changed my name on social media, Matt Rivera TLC. Did the whole thing. I hadn't heard of Cody Ko at the time. I had no idea who he was.
Right, yeah.
But a lot of friends of mine were like, oh my gosh, look at this funny video. Look at this video. And I watched it. I'm like, all right, this video is hilarious. It doesn't bother me that people find it entertaining. I think it bothers me. I wouldn't even use the word bother me. It's a little annoying, I think, at times when some people are like, oh, you cheap. Could I have to watch my language on this? All right, cool. You cheap bastard. Like you're wasting your time. Because I don't even know how to. I'm like, all right, thanks. What do you want me to say to that? So it doesn't even bother me. It's just more like a useless comment almost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, but I definitely capitalized on this. I don't think those things bother me at all. Like a lot of people, I read the comments. Oh, you handle it so well. Cody Ko, this guy always has a smile on his face. It didn't bother him. No, it didn't bother me at all. If anything, I thanked them. I'm like, listen, you guys are part of the reason why I was able to create this YouTube channel and make something out of it. So thanks. I'm not offended. If anything, do it again.
Kind of think of it, actually, now you say it, because you often play like a heel, which for those who aren't familiar with wrestling terminology means bad guy.
Right.
And you play a bad guy on the independents quite regularly. So I guess you would be pretty used to getting abuse and sort of just taking it in your stride. You're like, whatever.
It really doesn't do anything to me. And I think a lot of people look at it like, oh, some people feel bad for me. They're like, oh, people are so mean to you. I'm like, I could care less. Like, I know being in any sort of spotlight, you're going to get it. It's just the way the world is.
And this is the thing. Like, I felt that way for you when I first saw this clip, and then I saw that Cody Ko thing. And then I saw everything that you're doing on YouTube and what you're doing now. I mean, for those who don't know, Matt basically regularly does live streams. He plays games. He reacts to things like, the latest WWE Battlegrounds game or something like that. Or, you do Q&As where you actively just take on questions. I've asked you some questions myself.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great way to give back. And to be honest, you do actually have a following. There are fans there. There are people that regularly tune in that want to help you, support you. I think one of the coolest things that you do, which I think has a lot of legs, particularly because of, wrestlers such as the Young Bucks doing their Being the Elite series. You're doing this sort of series where you regularly talk about interactions you've had with famous wrestlers such as Nunzio or other wrestlers like that. And I think that's a great way to give back. A good, people really like to have like a look in or a lens into like the business and how it works behind the scenes, because obviously everyone knows that wrestling is not real, blah, blah, blah. But like that kind of makes the behind the scenes even more fascinating, particularly with all the shoots that we see that even happen to this day. I mean, for example, when John Moxley left WWE, you know, his shoot interview just blew up and was just nuts.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of legs with what you've done with it and everything, and how you've kind of, as I say, like leveraged it, turned it into something. And I think that's probably a lot of the reason why so many people are getting behind what you're doing, because it's like, okay, he's taken it well, he's moved forward. And this kind of leads me on to the future, or to at least like what's going on right now. I feel kind of weird asking this question because I kind of already know the answer, but you know, every wrestler has a different way of looking at the business. And I guess I want to know kind of like what your main goals and aspirations in professional wrestling are right now, because, you know, you've had a little bit of a taste of success. You know, people know your name.
Right.
And right now, arguably, for the first time in many years, there's actual many different options. Like just to kind of lay it out for those that are unaware, you've got WWE and you've got AEW. Those are like your two main American major promotions right now. And then you've got all these other ones who regularly tour in other countries. So you've got like MLW, who puts on a lot of shows in Mexico. You've got Impact, you know, formerly TNA, still there. You know, you've got New Japan putting on shows here. You've got famous wrestlers from like the UK and America going over to Japan and regularly working in Japan. Point is, you've got a lot of options.
Right.
So this is kind of a two-part question. Like, what are your goals and aspirations? And ideally, like, where's best for you? Where's best for Matt Rivera or Matt Saxon? And by the way, which name are we going by?
So that itself is a whole other question. But right now we'll say Matt Rivera. It's a weird spot because I've been, so my full name is Matthew Saxon Rivera. That's the full name. And I'll just do a quick side story. When I first started wrestling training, there was someone already named Rivera. There was an Antonio Rivera, and they didn't want us to think that we were brothers.
There's also a guy who wrestles for TNA as well. It's called, I think it's Matt Rivera or something. So
Matt Rivera. Yeah. We get confused all the time. People are like, "Oh, didn't Jerry Lawler cut your perm?" I'm like, "No, he didn't cut my perm. Like, that wasn't me." That happens all the. I've argued with people like, "No, you're that guy." I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know who I am. Last time I checked. As far as goals go, man, it's when I first decided to start. Actually, let me backtrack. Let me really backtrack if that's okay. After the Impact Wrestling tryout, I really didn't know what was next for me. I was definitely a little distraught because I kind of felt like TNA wasn't able to see what I can really do. You know, they just saw what was filmed. Like, everything you saw was probably like 90 or 80% of the interactions I had with them. So it wasn't like the cameras went off and I was there for hours and hours and hours. If anything, I was there for maybe an hour, got to talk a little bit, but then we had to go shoot the next scene. It was about TLC more than it was about Impact Wrestling in my tryout. So, like, you know, and I understood that, I got it, but deep down it was like, man, this sucks. Like, that was it. It's gone. You know, like, I just felt like that opportunity flew out of my hands and it was never going to come back. And not that was true, but that's how I felt at the time. So I kind of took a step back from wrestling. I was just like, you know what? My goal was to get an opportunity like that and then see what happens. So in my mind, I hit my top goal. It was to get an opportunity like that and then see what happens. So it really, really kind of sucked. But with this happening, with the boom, with the interest in the cheap wrestler, the main question I get, the number one question is, when are you returning to the ring? You know, like, that is the number one question.
Well, this is just a real quick question on top of that as well. I was reading back and looking over your career, and there was a point where you kind of stopped wrestling. So, like, briefly, and then you started again. Now, obviously, with the pandemic and everything, it just throws everything out of the water. But there are people wrestling. There are shows going on, right?
Right.
So with this pause that happened, is that something that just happened like before the pandemic and it's just whatever for you? Or is it a case of like you're kind of waiting until the right moment and then you're going to jump on it kind of thing? Like,
it's a tough question to say. I'm definitely one of those people who I take the pandemic very seriously. Like, I really do. There's a lot of people out there, and this is not me bashing anyone. Everyone has a different mentality and different feelings on it. But I'm someone who's extremely cautious during this time. And there are a lot of people who, they're like, hey, whatever, I'll jump in the ring with a stranger right now, no problem. And I'm just not on board with that. So it's almost hard for me to think about the future because I really don't know what it's going to look like next month. I have no clue. If it's going to be worse, if it's going to be better. But let's pretend the pandemic didn't happen. Let's go with that. So when I started this YouTube channel, well, when it blew up, I decided, okay, what this is going to be, I'm going to have a bunch of videos, but it's going to be on my way back to the wrestling ring. I always have a love for wrestling.
Yeah.
And I always felt that I had something special to offer within wrestling. And it's more personality, storytelling, that sort of thing. A lot of people ask me, great question, and I had to really think about it, but someone asked me on YouTube, if you had to compare yourself with another wrestler, who would it be? And I had to really think about that because, and I don't mind saying this, I never considered myself to be a great wrestler. Never. Like, I'm not Kurt Angle. I don't wrestle like Chris Benoit. I'm not Shawn Michaels. Like, I'm not. You know, I'm not Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks. Like, you're not going to see me doing springboard.
I gotta say as well, I don't think that that's the measure of a good wrestler either. Because
I don't think so either.
You know, like just to give a real quick example, you know, like Ric Flair wasn't the best wrestler ever, but like he was able to like command any arena that he was in and piss people off. And like if you take like, because for me, a good wrestling, and this, I guess it's subjective, you know, I love to see all the flips, all that stuff. That's great, right? But for me, a real wrestling match is a mixture of having those moves in the right places where it means something, like making everything mean something, having good ring psychology, making people almost believe that you do really hate each other.
Right.
And, you know, having that emotion to some degree, or if there's not like an obvious reason for you guys to hate each other, then they call it storytelling, I guess, you know, in the ring where you kind of logically play through the match. So like, let's say you have two guys where it's not obvious who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, right? Mm. You know, I often see Cody do this, Cody Rhodes, you know, he'll you know, play the bad guy because he knows how to do it and he knows like when to do it as well. Right. So I think for you, you know, you have that, like you said, like, yeah, I believe I have something. And this is not me kissing your ass. This is me saying, I believe that too. When I look at you, I see a guy who's going to make it on one of those shows. Like I said, it's not a question of if, but when, because it's all about like being able to see that. And I think that this is one of the mistakes that WWE always makes, is that, you know, they have so much talent, so many guys that you're like, yeah, that guy, but like they don't push them in the right way. Right. You know, take someone like Keith Lee, for instance. They're pushing him. He's at the top. He's, you know, he's got the NXT title. But to be honest with you, when he had that like look with Reigns and he went like toe to toe with him, and there was that, I was like, that's like your next Rock right there.
I 100% agree with you with Keith Lee. I feel like he is the total package. He has the it factor, and he has a unique look. He moves differently. To me, Keith Lee is one of those guys that they should be investing in. Absolutely.
Point being that, like, you know, if the company is behind you and you've got that right platform and they give you that breathing room, which is why that's why I'm more into AEW at the moment. Like, I still keep up with WWE, I watch the pay-per-views, whatever. But for me, the week-to-week product with AEW is better because it builds up people. It's logical, you know, and they give the person breathing room. If something's working, they roll with it.
Right.
And I feel like with you, that's what it will be. If you can come in and go, hey, I got this to offer. And they're like, okay, show us what you can do.
Right.
I think that's what...
You're absolutely right. And you had asked this question before, and I tend to kind of ramble on and go a bunch of different directions.
I do the same thing.
But you had asked where I see myself, or where do I think would be the best fit if I were to keep pursuing wrestling. AEW is absolutely the answer. I obviously would love to say WWE, you know, I want to be on the WrestleMania card, and all those things are true, but I think right now AEW would be the best fit for the cheap wrestler. You know, something with, I guess, kind of a comedy gimmick at times, but also with, like you said, a little bit more free reign of character and development, because WWE is the factory mass produced, and I mean this in like the best ways. Like, all major companies get to this point if you want to be successful, but sometimes you want to see something a little more organic, a little more fresh, a little more, just something different. And I think the cheap wrestler would fit better in AEW than he would in NXT or WWE.
You know, I gotta say, like, part of me is like, yeah, you know, you should run with a cheap wrestler gimmick and go for it, because, like, why not? But part of me is like, you know, I've seen you being a heel, going with, I guess, the number one attraction gimmick or something like that. And I feel like personally, I feel like that's a better kind of fit for you. I think you should go in there like serious and just be like, this is me. We can do the comedy thing later on, or maybe we can even make I don't know, like, let's say like you were included in the Being Elite series, for argument's
Right.
sake, and they did like little segments of you being cheap, and it can be like a running gag kind of thing. But
Right.
I don't like the idea of it being your main gimmick, because I think that just like pigeonholes you and limits, do you know what I mean, your
Oh yeah,
potential. And just
absolutely.
with what you were saying about WWE, I completely agree. I actually, a lot of the time when I see that a wrestler is going to WWE, I'm like worried for them, because like, yeah, back in the 90s, 2000s, whatever, it was the place to be. But now there's so many options, and I feel like they have everyone, but like not everyone, like a lot of people fail there.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean, let's look at Bobby Roode. What is he doing? And I always felt Bobby Roode was top 5 for me in Impact Wrestling of all time. I haven't even seen the guy on TV.
I know it's very easy to sit back and be like, you know, because, you know, they will probably, let's say like, I criticize them, they would be like, well, okay, what would you do better? And it's like, well, for a start, I'd have less talent. They
And
have
that's really what it is.
they have
Yeah.
too many people. It's an oversaturation. That's why people like Bobby Roode just kind of sit in the mid card. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with being in the mid card. Don't get me wrong, but what they do, I think they kill people. And this is why I think AEW is better, right? If you see that a guy is like gradually winning, you're like,
Right.
oh, and you expect him to get a title shot, and then it happens, you know. Or if a wrestler pulls off like a big win over someone, they'll get a title shot or they'll be in the
Right.
running. It's logical professional wrestling, as it should be. Whereas WWE, it's like, here's a really good example, a real quick one, because I don't want to take too much time on this. But
Yeah, no
you
problem.
remember when Bray Wyatt as a Fiend lost to Goldberg, lost the title? Right.
Yeah.
It was dumb. It was mismanaged, right? But the thing that pissed me off the most was that was it. No
Yeah.
no payback, no,
No.
you know, they'd never mentioned it again. He just went straight on to Cena. Goldberg went off and did his thing. That was it. And I was like, well, what's the point? Well, you just buried him and then that's it. And a lot of the time when you say that to them, like, oh, well, you know, people have to lose, and, you know, it's wins and losses don't matter. And it's like, no, they do matter. And it needs to be logical. It's fine for someone to lose. But if it's someone that's like always winning, like take Cody Rhodes right now, yeah? They're doing a thing where every week he's you know, wrestling with the TV title, and it's obviously building up. He will lose it at some point, but he'll lose it in a big way.
Right.
Imagine if like one week he just randomly lost it to some guy who's never been on the show before. Like, everyone's going to be well, I keep saying, yeah, if there's any way to put you in the picture straight away, it's wrestling Cody, and I think you do an excellent job.
You have pushed for that, and I do appreciate that.
Every time he mentions it, I tag him in. I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy, stop sleeping on Matt Rivera.
I appreciate that, man. I really do.
It'll happen, man. Like I said, but you got to keep pushing too, man.
Oh, so, and I'll get to that in 1 second. Like I said, I feel like my mind just goes and just goes in all crazy ways. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I was actually just talking to a good friend of mine the other day about WWE storylines. We're like, all right, Vince McMahon blowing up in the limo, obviously that didn't work out for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
But Vince McMahon's son being Hornswoggle. Like, I was like, okay, why?
That's just a cop out. That's all that was. Lazy.
Or even Hornswoggle also ended up being the what was it? The
anonymous general manager.
The anonymous GM. And I'm like, you guys aren't even trying. Like, it's not just funny because he's a little person. You can't just be like, oh, it's funny because he's a little person. He's like, no.
But that's Vince's humor. He finds that shit funny for
I know, and
whatever
I'm like,
reason.
maybe it was funny, like, early '90s, late '80s, but it's not funny anymore. It's old, and I think the fans are becoming more. It's interesting. Fans are becoming more a part of it. They're becoming more aware, a little smarter when it comes to the business and just what's going on behind the scenes. And I think more fans are becoming, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like they teach themselves. Like everyone who's a fan has a understanding of what they feel like they should see. And WWE tends to drop the ball on that. Even the hacker storyline. Like, I'm curious if the hacker ends up popping up again with a retribution, because I can kind of see maybe something there. But the bigger part of me is like, Matt, the hacker thing is probably just done and that's it, and you'll never see it again.
Yeah, they do that often. Like, and it pisses me off because like there were talks about it being CM Punk, and I'm like, oh, that would be amazing, but it's not going to be.
I don't think so.
I think the general consensus was that it would be Ali, and
right.
by God, does that guy need a push?
He does, and I think him, Ricochet, and Cedric are all suffering in the same boat. We're super talented guys, but you know what though? And I will say this: all super talented guys, but none are known for their mic skills. None are known for their ability to cut a promo. And I'm not saying that they can't, but they're not known for it. And
they do. I agree. I mean,
yeah.
I'm always the first to give applause, because this is the thing. Like, I'll criticize WWE all day, but I'll also give them props for like everything they do right. And same with wrestlers. Ricochet, amazing worker, but not good on the mic. I haven't heard a single promo that's good. However, WWE, problem with them is that they script everything, and I feel like Ricochet is not good with that. Certain guys are okay with it, but generally speaking, whoever you give a script to is not good. It's better to just let a guy, have key points. If anything, I use this approach when I do my acting videos. I don't actually script my acting videos. I just have a couple of ideas.
Right.
And I go for it. Yeah, and like every great wrestling promo there has ever been has been like that. You think of your Dusty Rhodes Hard Times or your Hogan's, they were told like, look, you've got 5 minutes. Tell them why they should watch this pay-per-view, and you just fucking go for it.
Exactly. And I think they really missed the ball on that. And I think with Ricochet, and I was telling a friend this, they gave Ricochet Neville's old crappy gimmick of being a superhero. And
oh my God, yes, they did.
That. Like, no one wants you to come out with like wings or a cape and like, I'm a good guy. Like, no. Like, if you're a good guy, be cool. Like, that's why like The Rock and Stone Cold were so popular, because they were cool. No one wants to be like, I'm a superhero.
See, the thing is, though, it's interesting you mentioned those guys, because those basically tweeners. I mean, Austin was a bad guy who people just fell in love with, and it was his rebelliousness. The Rock, obviously, originally a heel, same thing. But who is truly like an actual babyface in the? Because I remember hearing some of the old guys like Cornette talk about this, and they say that a good guy typically he won't cheat. He'll wrestle, for honor and stuff like that. And I think that kind of a babyface can exist, but it has to be logical. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's John Cena. That's John Cena right there.
Yeah. And with John Cena, that's the thing. Like, he
obviously not the most loved babyface of all time. He's not.
It's because it was too much of that thing that you're saying, that nice guy shit. If he would have played up to the heel stuff a little bit, not going bad guy, but been like, rolled with it, people would have been fine. Because Cena, like, in the beginning was
amazing. Everyone loved John Cena. That's why he got to that spot,
And then it just grew into that, like, sick. And it's the same thing with like Roman Reigns. Like, he's more enjoyed now because they're like, okay, we won't give him shitty stuff to say. We'll just let him be him. And it's like, oh, actually, he's cool. He's, like you say, he's a badass.
Right. And Roman Reigns is a tough one too, just because when he gets on the mic, man, it's so flat. It's so flat. Like, he doesn't even have like pitches in his voice. It's just one flat thing. I'm gonna go in there and take back my yard.
They tell him to do it like that, though. Because I've seen.
I know.
He did a heel promo in NXT, and it was different guy. It was amazing.
Yeah. And it sucks. I don't know why they do that. And to go back to your question before, I do consider The Rock and Stone Cold true baby faces, and the reason why is because deep, like, it doesn't matter what they do. It matters how they make you feel. They make you feel like cheering them on, that you wish they were your best friend. You want to be on their team. They are fighting the people that you hate, like they might, okay, yeah. In real life, if I went and stone cold stunnered my boss, that is not a good thing to do. That's a bad guy thing to do. But in the world of wrestling, and when Vince McMahon is your boss, you're basically an angel. You might be an angel with 2 cans of beer in your hand, but you're still an angel, So to me, they're 2 of the greatest baby faces of all time. And another great example is Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero, lied, cheat, and steal. Those are not 3 words that should be associated with a baby face, but they were,
Moving it forward, you've wrestled with the likes of, if people can believe this, right, wrestling fans, get ready for this. Tito Santana, obviously
Yep.
Nunzio, we mentioned before. Jimmy the Superfly Snooker.
Right?
This was all in the same match.
Yeah, that's all one match.
Crazy.
With Nikolai Volkov, yeah.
Oh yeah. Just absolutely incredible. You've had some pretty amazing experiences, interactions with people, but what would you say, of your career so far would be like your greatest achievements and moments, like your personal successes?
Hey, that's a great question. Definitely that match is one of them, because to this day it is, and I just want to make sure I'm thinking, yeah, it's the biggest crowd I've ever wrestled in front of. It was maybe 5,000 people in Brooklyn. So it was like, yeah, it was like, quite a bit of people, and that, I'm used to 50 to 100, maybe like 150, 200 tops. So that's like a really good day. But that was definitely one of them. Just being able to get in the ring with 3 legends and, look around, and I'm in a stadium. I'm like, wow. And that day was really cool because it was like an all-day event. And, there's people interviewing, and it was just really dope. And I feel like it was one of those days where I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to be a pro wrestler. Like, today's a good day. Some other big accomplishments. I got a few. Obviously getting to do the Impact tryout is huge.
Yeah.
So that's top 3 right there. I worked for a small company that decided to make me their world champ. And I really appreciated that, because I felt like it was solely on the fact that I was entertaining enough, because I'm not a tall guy. I'm not a big guy or anything like that. And I'm not a high flyer. So I always am curious to see what's the most important aspect to other people. Like, is it that I'm 6'5"? Because nope, that's not a thing. Is it if I can wrestle like Daniel Bryan, or is it if I can fly like a young buck? And I'm curious, because to me, going back with something I said before, is I compare myself to like an Enzo or an MVP, where them more for their characters, not for them in the ring, And it's not that either one were bad in the ring. Like, you didn't watch their matches and go, oh my gosh, it's Eva Marie, what are you doing there, Like,
she got pretty good towards the end, though. I will say that for her.
I don't know, man. Maybe in comparison to how she was, but not in
Well, yeah.
not in comparison to like WWE, She was,
Okay, all right.
and I always spread love, and I don't mean to, if she were to ever see this, I mean in the nicest way possible, but
I don't think she ever was like aiming to be the best wrestler ever.
I don't think
she took it seriously, but yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. But anyway, accomplishments. I would say another big one was I wrestled for Northeast Wrestling, and that was big for me because it was in my hometown too. So that was really dope, and there was a lot of people on that card that I was able to pick the brains of, like Tommy Dreamer.
Oh wow.
Roddy Piper, which.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you met Roddy Piper. Yeah.
He, I feel like when he passed, man, like, and I'm not one to be like, oh, we were like this, because we weren't.
Yeah.
But he's one of those people that met for a very short period of time in my life, but made an impact, made a mark. And I will never forget him. I thought I had a terrible match that night. I had a terrible match that night. And, he came up to me afterwards. He saw it on my face, because I just kind of sat in the corner. What did I just do? Like, that was terrible. And, put his arm around me, and he was a character, man. Like, he was Roddy Piper. We're sitting in a locker room, and he looks at, he's like, oh, if these lockers can speak, the stories they would tell. I'm like, all right, okay. I don't know what to say. I'm like, sure, yeah.
That's so cool, man.
But yeah, exactly. And it's funny to say, but that's a moment for me. To me, that's huge. Like, I will never forget that,
Mm.
But I know running out of time here, and I do want to answer something that you asked probably like half an hour ago. Where do I see what's next wrestling wise? So I'm hoping this pandemic ends sooner than later, but I have a feeling it's something that's going to be something we deal with for years to come. I hate saying that, but it's just my gut feeling. However, I do want to get back in the ring for a lot of reasons. I have something that I'm going to kind of introduce on YouTube. It's going to be my, I guess, wrestler wish list, if you will. There's a lot of people on the independent scene that I didn't get to step in the ring with that I would feel like I need to if I'm going to close that chapter of my life. I'm very flexible right now on what the next handful of years can look like. But one thing I know for sure is I love entertaining people. I always have. A lot of people go, oh, what he does is fake because he's an actor. I'm like, oh yeah, I love acting, but it's not really relevant to what's fake in my life. I just love doing that also. You know, I love music. I love making people feel something. So whether I was a good guy or a bad guy, if people would go home and go, wow, I felt that, or that guy was a jerk, or whatever, then I did my job right. And I feel like if I can make somebody forget their normal day life for just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and either bring a smile to their face or make them feel a little pissed at me, or whatever, sad, happy, that I feel like is an accomplishment for me. And I think that that's my main goal in life. And I've been able to do that with this YouTube channel now, which is something I'm very thankful for. But I do plan on stepping back in the ring. And I feel like when I do, it'll be with a different mindset than when I last wrestled. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And I do believe, like you said, I do believe, forget believe, I know that I have something that I can offer to a wrestling promotion. And I feel like it's on them if they pick it up or not. Like well, you asked the question. I've been running my mouth for too long.
Okay. Real quick, how old are you right now?
Oh, that's one of the big questions that I usually don't tell anybody. I don't know. I might have to sip my tea on this one. I'm 32.
32, right.
32. Yep.
See, this is the thing. You sound hesitant. It's like you almost said before, like, oh, maybe winding down. As far as I'm concerned, you're still in the prime. Like, you've got plenty of years to like carve something out for yourself. And
right.
Do you know what I mean? There's wrestlers that go into their 50s, 60s even. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of potential for you. Now, you say you're building towards something. I'm not going to like push you for that. We'll save that for your YouTube. I will say go and subscribe to his channel. He creates great content. And, I felt like there's something in the rumblings with you that you're not really revealing, that I feel, because to be honest with you, every week that I watch AEW, I'm like, this could be it. He might turn up. You just never know. You never know. And I fully expect it that, like, I just know. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to get this interview as well. Because it's that guy was on my podcast and I believed in him and he's there. And now no one can say anything because I believed in him day one.
and I do really appreciate that. And I get what you're saying, because I think a lot of people do have that feeling that I could appear on a wrestling show any day of the week. They might turn on Impact and see me. They might turn on. That's another one. Impact is another one that I think that there is a lot of potential in me going to for a couple of reasons. I do know a few people in Impact and AEW, but there's a few people in there that I'm like, all right, maybe I should reach out to. But beyond that, the story writes itself if I'm in Impact, right?
I got to say as well, like, because I thought about asking you this, but I wasn't sure. And I kind of figured what you would say. But Ortiz from AEW. Now, from those who don't know, if you watch the TLC clip that we mentioned earlier, you can see Ortiz in the background, and you guys, and you've explained, I asked you this question, like, is that the guy? And you're like, yeah, it is. It's him. We, trained together briefly. And then for those who know, he then went on to Impact, and then now he's in AEW. And I keep racking my brains like, why don't you just ask him? Just be like, hey, listen, I really want to make it, do you think you could sort me out just a shot?
So with Ortiz, it's funny because some people, I actually didn't even realize he was in the shop, So when someone's like, is that Ortiz? I'm like, what are you talking about? So a couple of things. I've only met him once or twice.
Okay.
Like in wrestling training, I don't really know him like that at all.
That's fine. I get it.
There's other people that I think I know a little better, like Falaba and Impact. He's someone that I would reach out to. But yeah, it's funny. Ortiz, like we just never really were there like at the same time.
Fair
Even
play.
that day when we did the filming, it was they got a lot of things that they shot, but it was very like, okay, now you got to stand over there and do this. Now you got to go over there and do that, you know?
Yeah.
So we only brushed shoulders extremely briefly, extremely. So I don't even think I'm at a place where I can, ask a favor or anything like
Well,
that.
even so, I mean, like, I think it's worth trying, or like to your impact buddies or whoever. Because, some people might say, oh, well, isn't that kind of using your friends? But you know what? Most people get their jobs through asking friends,
Yeah.
firstly. Secondly, this is
Oh,
the wrestling business. And, you know, at the end of the day, you're going to have to work for it. They can get you a shot, but you have to like prove. And I feel like, it's been 7 years since that TNA shot.
oh yeah.
A lot
Right,
of
right.
time to think, a lot of time to grow. Think like I say, I feel like you have a feeling. And one thing, this is less a question, but more a kind of thing that I just wanted to do because I thought it would be kind of cool.
Sure.
What is your message to the promoters, to the Cody Rhodes of the world, maybe WWE, whoever? This is your chance right now to be like,
All right. My
employ
turn
me,
to
give
sell
me a
myself.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, for any company, like if you want entertainment, if you want to make money, like I'm your guy. And I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up anyone's ass. It's just a fact. Like when I speak, people listen. It is what it is. So if they're looking for someone that can captivate an audience, someone who can rub someone the wrong way, or just kind of evoke any sort of an emotion, then you want someone like me. Because there's plenty of people that could do a flip, but there's not many people that can get you to feel something, that can suck you in. And I feel like that's something that I have that a lot of people don't. And it's not something that I feel like I know it's something that I have. I know for a fact, and it's not even arrogance. It's just a fact. And you can give a mic to 100 people, and maybe 3 of them will stand out, but I'll be first on that list, even in the top 3.
And that's how I wanted to end this. Right there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
perfect.
And then that's how I feel. And some people say that that's arrogant, and maybe it is. But I feel like, listen, I'm the first one to say I'm not the best high flyer. I'm not even the best wrestler. But because of that, I will tell you right here, that's money. That I have, So that's all I got to say about that.
So to everyone, particularly Cody Rhodes,
Cody
this is
Rhodes.
your man. Give this guy a shot because he's going to make you money.
And fact.
So drawing it all to a close, I mean, to be honest, I had tons more questions to ask you, but I'm just grateful to have had you here and to have had this
You know what?
So
We'll run another 10 minutes. How does that sound?
you got a bit more time. Okay.
I got a little more time, yeah.
Well, that works for me because I wanted to ask you real quick about your music.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you go under, this is totally different. For those who don't know, you go under the name Maverick with your rap career. And you've been doing this quite a few years, actually. Like, I thought maybe this was a new thing, but you've been doing this a while. You've released some music and stuff. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into rapping, what it means to you, and what your main goals and aspirations are with music.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I had said before, I definitely like to touch a different lot of branches of entertainment. And when I was maybe like 13 years old, I was going through a bit of a hard time, as much, young teens do. And I started writing. I started writing poetry. And I just kind of felt like I love this poetry, but I want to like rip it from the paper and put it in people's heads and in their ears. Like I just felt like I wanted to bring it to life in a different way. So I started writing hip hop music. Now it's funny because I listen to a lot of different music. I'm not someone who's like, oh, I just like rap. I can listen to, well, now country, that's new for me, but I can listen to country.
Same.
Yeah, my sugar mama put me onto it. And there's some, like, I really like Zach Brown Band. I don't know if you listen to them at all, but big fan. But anyway, so I started writing music when I was 13. First song I ever recorded was when I was 15 years old. So over half my life ago was the first time I ever recorded something. And I just did it as a hobby at first. But again, just kind of like with wrestling, I was like, nah, I have something that other people don't have. Let me try something with this. So it's been majority of a hobby, but a couple of years ago, I decided to really start pushing it. And I come out with a bunch of different types of like hip hop music. I did a song about the school shootings that were happening in the States, which got a lot of, I don't want to say popularity because I just feel like that's a weird word to use.
It got some attention. Basically.
Yeah, got some attention. Yeah, that's a better word. And I love making music. It's probably something that I'll do for the rest of my life, even if it's slow. Because right now, I started something called Battle Zone Bars, which you probably have seen, and I'll talk about that very briefly because I could talk about it forever. But it's a hip hop cipher competition.
Mhm.
And the reason I did that was because just like with wrestling, where I had a goal where I was like, all right, trying out for a major promotion is my top goal. My top goal for music was to get into this contest called Team Backpack. And I was like, all right, that's my top goal with music. Once I get there, I'll be content. So I get there and I leave the contest and I'm just scratching my head and I'm like, that didn't do anything for me. I thought that was going to be, same thing with Impact. I thought that was going to be what put me on the next pedestal, And I guess when I look back at both of those moments in life, I should have been more okay with, hey, Matt, you might not be moving up, but maybe here's a left turn, and maybe that'll eventually get you where you want to be. Because I felt both of those moments in my life were very disheartening moments, But back to the contest real quick. Leaving that, I was like, I left with nothing. Like I didn't have anything to show for participating in that and getting to that stage. So what I wanted to do was create something to give back to other people. So it's very cheap to enter the contest and you end up getting a bunch of things, music videos, you can get free mixing and mastering of music.
Okay.
There's so much that you can walk away with that I was like, no, this is going to make a good hip hop contest because it costs a lot of money to pursue something in entertainment. As you know, you end up getting camera, mics, equipment, it gets to be a very expensive hobby or career. And at this stage with music, I think it's more about giving back and creating something than I'm just gonna make it on my own. Like I don't need to be the next Eminem or anything like that. I just want to kind of give back and help people where I felt like I could have used the help.
No, respect. That's a really cool thing to do. I think not a lot of people necessarily have that approach, so that's really cool. Do you think you would ever use your music, like record a song as like your entrance theme or something like that?
I would do my song as my entrance theme. I totally would. I had recorded a song once and I ended up using it maybe like twice. And
Not
I had
feeling
other
it.
songs. No, yeah, I had other songs that I had used as entrance themes that I'm like, no, that just fits more. Like, even though I recorded this, like, this is me. Like, when I was a baby face on the independent scene, I used Macklemore, Can't Hold Us. I don't know if you know that song. It's a very, like, hyping song, Like, you hear
Wow.
it, like right away, it gets
I
people
can
like,
imagine
oh,
that actually working. Yeah, now I
yeah.
think about it. That's yeah.
And I came out to it, and, like, people would be like, yeah, this is crazy. When I was a heel, I used two different songs.
It's got to be metal, really, isn't it? Heavy
You know
metal.
what? Not even, because I wasn't an intimidating heel at all. So I was more like I needed something with like swag and like obnoxiousness,
I believe the term is chicken shit heel.
I was definitely, oh, absolutely. And I have some great heel stories too. Like, oh yeah, like I'll give you a quick one. And I tell this to my sugar mama, and when she heard I did this, she was just like, "Are you crazy? You can't do that." I remember walking out as a heel one time, and there was a young man sitting in the front row who was a little overweight, and he was eating like a Snickers bar. So I walk by him and he goes, "You suck." So when I'm in heel mode, it's better to just not say anything to me. That's the smart thing. So I lean in real close to where I'm like, all right, only the immediate people will hear what I have to say to this kid. So I snatch his Snickers bar from his hand and I look at him and I go, "I just did you a huge favor." And I throw it across the room, like just like over the ring, I just chuck it. And he starts crying, and his mom is like looking at me like I'm the worst person, like I'm the devil.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm just like, I'm a heel. What do you want? If you're gonna say I suck, if you're gonna open your mouth when I walk by, prepare for the consequences. And that was your consequences, fat kid. That's how I felt at the time. That's not how I feel in real life. At the time, that was my mindset. Like, it was so bad that the promoter had to talk to me afterwards. He goes, "Matt, listen, I know you're just being a heel, but," I'm like, and when I'm in that mode, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. I'm being a heel. I'm like, so I don't really see the problem,
Yeah.
And he
I
goes,
agree.
but she was really upset. So I take out $2
Good.
to my wallet. And I'm like, listen, you can go give this to the mom. But honestly, like, I'm not going to apologize. You know, like, he could go
No,
get another.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And this is what, again, why I think there's so much to you, particularly as being a heel in the industry. Like, this is what we need. You know,
This,
like so many of the best heel bad guys are like total sweethearts, but they just know to switch it on. Like Baron Corbin, MJF,
oh
perfect.
yeah, MJF is a great example. Great
You
example.
got to be an asshole. Like, if anything, that promoter should have been like, we got some pushback from that, but thank you so much for making me money. That's exactly what I need.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's the point. I'm like, no, I'm not here to be a secretly nice heel. Like, no, I want you to go home and be like, that guy was a dick.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know. But this is my biggest struggle. I love being a heel. I love it, and I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I'm really good at it. But the cheap wrestler is what's bringing me to new heights. So that is where I struggle, because again, I look back at, you know, when Extreme Cheapskates first came out, I stuck to my guns. I was like, no, number one attraction. That's what it's gonna be. You know?
Okay, I'm gonna pitch you an idea.
Sure.
Here's what you do: you go in with the cheapskate gimmick, right?
Right.
You get jobbed out a little bit. You know, you get aggressive slowly. You're like, they're not taking me seriously, and then boom, heel turn, and then that's when you see Max Saxon. So you
Ah,
come in with the gimmick, you're like, yeah, you know, I'm that guy that did that. And then
right.
suddenly nasty, horrible. And then that's the thing. Everyone will be like, huh, now I've got a reason to like hate him. And they can also like mock you and you'll be like feeding into it because you're a bad guy. It just works. It just works. See,
I
I
like the
should
way you
be in the wrestling business, man. I've got
think.
ideas forever. And you know the
Absolutely.
thing, there's been ideas that I've thrown out there that have actually happened, and it kind of freaked me out, and it makes me wonder, like, did they like read that? Like,
How'd they find that? Did they read my comment?
that's the thing. Like, I think some company, like particularly WWE, is really predictable. A lot of the time when I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, I just know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes they throw you off, but a lot of the time it's really predictable.
I think
But
sometimes in WWE they also don't do the predictable, like in the way where you're like, no, this was supposed to happen. Why didn't that happen?
yeah, like Kevin Owens not winning the Cena feud is a good
Right,
example.
right. You're just like, but why'd you make that, like, when it should be predictable and we expect this outcome, they don't do it. Yeah, they could be all over the place, but what can you do?
Thank you so much for just agreeing to be on the show, making this a fantastic interview. I want to just kind of end this on what would be, do you have any like upcoming projects aside from the ones you've discussed? Anything that's upcoming that you want to tell your fans about, or tell the listening audience, for those who aren't aware of you? Or do you have any just final thoughts you'd like to share with us before we draw this to a close?
Absolutely. I have a bunch of things going on right now, so I will share a little bit about that. As we've discussed, the YouTube channel just is constantly growing, which I am extremely thankful for. Thankful for people like you for your support and having me, do something like this. It's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely follow me on YouTube, Matt Rivera TLC. I am uploading a whole bunch of new things, and I'm starting to, with my YouTube channel, I really want to create something that has something for everyone. Oh, you
Mm.
like video games? Yeah, I like video games too. Like, it doesn't have to be pigeonholed to, oh, I'm just a wrestler,
Right.
You
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
music? Let's talk about music. And sometimes that's a little challenging because people are like, all right, but I don't know what to expect when I go there, which sometimes is a thing all its own. But anyway, so always going to be doing new music. If you haven't already, YouTube, Battles on Bars, that's my other channel. It's all about hip hop music. So if you're into that, definitely join. But I do have a lot of new kind of like mini series that will be debuting on the YouTube channel. So I decided at 5K, I was like, I'm gonna do some different stuff. I want to, kind of expand on this even more. I did the wrestling road stories, and then I came to a point where I felt like that had exhausted its options. So I want to do cheap shots, which when I first kind of tested the waters, cheap shots was something I did where I just kind of showed like a cheap hack or a trick or something silly that I did. I
Oh,
think,
right. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it'd be a little silly, it'd be a little comedic, but but also like, no, it is something you should do. It might be a good idea. You know, like I think I went hitchhiking on one episode, but I decided to kind of use that to test the waters and then grow from there. But I'm bringing it back in a new way. What I'm going to do is watch other people who have been on Extreme Cheapskates and see their life hacks and then try them myself. So that's
critique of the cheapskate.
yeah. I'm going to critique it and I'm going to try it to see if it's BS, if it helps, if it's, you know.
That's
so,
genius.
Yeah, I feel like that's what Cheap Shots is going to be. So one thing that people ask me about, and I wanted to wait until I felt like I needed new content to do this, is a weekly regular show just about what's going on in wrestling. I'm going to call it Talk is Cheap. It just makes sense.
Brilliant.
So, and since we're doing this, I'll even, I'll throw it out there right now. I would love to have you be on the first episode. What it is I'm going to have different people who have podcasts, wrestling enthusiasts, wrestlers, former wrestlers, current wrestlers, referees, managers, like anybody who has knowledge of professional wrestling. I kind of want to ask questions, get input. I want it to look like almost a Knights of the Round Table of different talents that know wrestling that can hold a discussion. So, we'll be talking about Raw, SmackDown, AEW, everything in between. But that's something that will be happening in the next couple of months. So I'll make sure I send you an invite for the first episode. And it'll be just like a similar forum where we're just shooting the shit and talking about what's going on in wrestling. I'll ask a few questions that maybe come up on the community page on YouTube and whatever. So yeah, a lot of things going on. So make sure you subscribe. Matt Rivera, TLC on YouTube. I am the cheapest wrestler in the world. Make sure you subscribe to my channel.
Absolutely. Subscribe. Yeah. Subscribe to Matt Rivera. And again, thank you very much for agreeing to appear on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and everywhere else that you're listening to me. I see that you're kind of listening to me everywhere, so it's a bit crazy. I hope everyone is enjoying the podcast on YouTube since we made the sort of jump to video as well. If you are listening to the podcast and you haven't actually seen those, I recommend just popping over to YouTube, have a little look. You get to actually see the guests. And particularly in the case of Matt Rivera, I think it's worth actually seeing him because when someone is cutting a promo, you want to see the whole thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you to everyone that's been listening to the Christian Reeve podcast. And if you would like to appear on my podcast, please send a message, get in touch with me. I would love to have you on the show. I love doing this. It's definitely my favorite thing to do on this podcast is interview people. I just love it. And thank you very much for listening. And until next time, peace out, one love. Ciao.
Thanks for having me.